You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
Do they call him the rapper? I don't know. Trudy and Sarah sitting in for Aaron and Natasha today. We welcome to Montreal Now James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. And James, you're going to be kicking off by talking about something that we're going to be speaking to the police chief about in just about half an hour, and that is a new recruitment program for the Montreal police force. Are you taking the stand that this is pointing to a whiff of desperation on the part of the Montreal force?
Well, absolutely. I've never heard of any police force, certainly not in Canada, and maybe it's happened elsewhere, that was offering new recruits a $10,000 signing bonus in exchange for their staying on the force for 5 years. Mr. Daguerre has already explained how it's like one step forward, two steps back, because even though they may recruit a few hundred people a year, the number of people who retire and the number of people who resign from the force over that same period of time usually ends up to a net gain of 10 officers. And this is, as we discover, with the situation in Montreal, which is a rather extraordinary one in terms of daily crime, in terms of the complexity of dealing with various forms of organized crime, street gangs, that force is in need not just of bodies, but of experience. So on the one hand, yes, I guess it's good that the Montreal Police Department has the resources, i.e. the funding from the City of Montreal to offer this. And let's face it, they're saying this is to cover training fees that you run up at Nicolet, which is the colloquial designation for Quebec's Police Academy. And that comes to a little more than $9,000, $10,000. But the reality is that's spent money no matter where you're going to end up working. So the fact is this is a straight-up signing bonus. It shows that, I use the word desperation. Yeah, I think they are desperate for bodies. And I think there's a litany of reasons why it's tough to recruit to Montreal. I think it's a tough gig. Yes, you can argue that Montreal police receive what I think translates into the big city bonus. I think it's like between 3 and 5% bump they get for working in a big city and dealing with big city crime. But all that said, there have been issues. There have been questions of morale issues on the force. And then there's the simple pragmatism that if you want to be a cop, you have a choice. You can go work in a quieter milieu, suburban milieu, probably end up making more money in the long run, and not deal with as much stress on the job. Is this going to work? It'll be very interesting to see if the numbers go up based on this. As I say, this is money that you're going to spend anyway. If you want to be a cop in Quebec, this money's coming out of your pocket. Having someone put that money back into your pocket, and let's face it, that works about, $2,000 a year if you stay for 5 years. Is it worth it, or are you going to maintain your plan to, say, work for a different police department, work in a different jurisdiction? I think it speaks volumes, Trudy, to where the Montreal police are right now, because you know perfectly well, you've been covering this stuff as long as I have. They have gone through so many incarnations of being gangbusters, of being repressive forces, of being community police officers. They're going almost through as many transmutations as the Quebec Liberal Party, and I think to a certain extent you're seeing younger officers saying, I don't want to. I'll wait for the Montreal Police Department to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up, and then I might join up. But right now, I'll probably end up going someplace else. I think this is exactly what this is about. And don't forget, there's also the issue, and people can argue about this, but you are now. I can't think of any job under less scrutiny, less instant judgment, less automatic vilification than being a police officer in these days, and perhaps with reason, but being a police officer in this day of social media, you have to be ready to perhaps see your life turned upside down if you make one wrong move or one controversial move. There's a lot there that would, make people think twice before coming before they become a cop. I'm not entirely sure 10 grand is going to change that.
And Fadi Daguerre, the head of the SPVM, will be our guest after 5:30, James, so you'll have to stay tuned for that. Now, all eyes are on one cemetery in the heart of the island. Will the strike end today? Now, the minister, Jean Boulet, says that he might have to force this to binding arbitration. What are your thoughts?
Well, listen, he made this clear on Monday. He visited both sides, visited the union, visited the Fabrique de Montreal, which is basically the branch of the church that essentially oversees the cemetery. And there's management, if you will, the Fabrique say they're very positive about it. They probably figure they're not going to lose if it goes to binding arbitration. The union is being very, very careful on this. They haven't said much. They said they'll think about it. It's interesting to note that the association that represents the families who have been prevented by the strike from visiting, their deceased loved ones, or worse, who one of the 300, who are related to one of the 300 bodies in cold storage that haven't been able to be buried since this strike began, issued a communique this morning, essentially calling on the government to adopt special legislation, telling the union, go in, don't screw around now, don't mess around with the whole arbitration thing. Go to arbitration. This is not a strike comme les autres, and I think they're right. And it's rather interesting that on the one hand, Boulet said, well, my offer expires on Wednesday. I need an answer by Wednesday. And this afternoon, he tweeted that, well, I'm going to give you one more day, but this is an extraordinary situation, and honestly, we're going to have to do something here. I'm hoping we can get the arbitration going. So let's see where it goes. But the very fact that he put this out there very publicly that he's going to give him another day suggests that perhaps some wheels are turning, perhaps phone calls are being made. But it also sort of broaches the bigger question. We used to have an Essential Services Act. Now it's a case by case basis. But this is an unusual situation. I'm probably the only person in this conversation right now who's got a union card in their pocket, and I understand the importance of respecting the collective bargaining process. But in this particular instance, we're talking about a job literally like no other, and the people who are stuck in the middle, those families who are unable, my God, to bury their loved ones, to know that they are still, being kept. I can't think of another way to say it. They're being kept in storage after all these months. It really is heartrending, and you really have to wonder whether either by decree or by legislation, the government should at least find a way to attenuate the effects of similar strikes in the future. Because honestly, there is a really sort of, let's say, it's sort of a heartbreaking element to this. It's also a bit macabre. But, all that said, it seems to me that the government may have to go beyond just settling this dispute, but making sure that future disputes are not quite as terrible for the people, for the families who are caught in the middle.
If you were a betting man, James Mennie, looking at that tweet from the Labour Minister, Jean Boulet, today about giving it another day, would you say there is a bargaining sprint in the offing and he's just trying to create a little room for that to happen?
Yeah, I think, as I say, I think phone calls are being made. I think the union realizes on the one hand, it's claiming that, management isn't budging, but they realize that no matter how justified their demands may be, it's absolutely impossible for them to be perceived as anything other by the general public as the bad guys in this, as the insensitive, boors who are breaking the hearts of these families. So that, and this is the CSN. This is not their first rodeo. They understand that to a certain extent you do need, if you don't necessarily need public support, you don't need public vilification. And I think that's where this is headed. Especially if for whatever reason, it is perceived that the union kind of blew up this attempt on the part of Boulet to bring both sides together. So is it a matter of saving face? Probably. I know the union was talking about they want to have a meeting of the membership. It's only 100 people. Have a meeting of the membership to determine whether they want to go to arbitration. Maybe that's happening even as we speak. But honestly, I think by this time tomorrow, we may be talking about, the arbitration process as opposed to this deadlock, which, as I say, has just been so heartbreakingly severe for all these families involved.
Either way, I think we'll know what the next step is by the time you join us again this time tomorrow, James. Thank you so much for chatting today. James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. Talk to you tomorrow.